All right, Judges 4, let's call this one two sisters. And we're not talking about two literal sisters, but sisters is sometimes a colloquial term for women in general in a more familiar context. And that is what we are dealing with here. Two women who God is going to use to deliver Israel when Deborah is not just the judge of Israel, but she is a prophetess to whom people are consulting to understand the will of God. She, however, is a judge during the time of Jabin, a Canaanite king ruling from a city by the name of Hazor with his general Sisera. Word is going to actually come to a man by the name of Barak, who seems to be a general in Israel's army at this time, that he is supposed to take a number of men and God is going to draw them out into conflict with those who have been oppressing them for the 20 years. But he apparently doesn't go because Deborah, the prophetess, is going to send word to him. Has not God already told you to go out so that these men will be drawn out to meet you at war so that God can deliver them into your hand? Barak is going to say, I'm not going unless you go too. And so she agrees. But she says, you are not going to get the glory that apparently he might have otherwise gotten if he had simply gone out at the word of the Lord. And so during the course of the battle, they are going to succeed. But Sisera, Jabin's general, is going to flee once it starts to look like the 900 chariots he's brought to war aren't going to be enough. And during the course of fleeing, he is going to flee to the tent of a woman by the name of Jael, who is actually the descendant of one of Moses' Midianite in-laws. And so we have a couple of things going on here that defy conventional wisdom. First of all, Deborah being a judge is not what we're used to when we think of the Samsons or even the Gideons who judged and delivered Israel. She is a woman who God has positioned for this time, who is actually, whether she's ever met her or not, is going to partner, for lack of a better term, with Jael, who is not just a woman, but she is a foreigner who God is using to help deliver Israel at this time. And so understand a couple of things are going on. One, the word is going to say that as far as God goes, his ways are higher than our ways. His thoughts are higher than our thoughts. And there are two temptations we can often fall into. One, it's placing artificial barriers on the ways in which God will do a thing. When Jesus was making his triumphal entry, they wanted to rebuke him for not rebuking those who were praising him with Hosanna, the kind of praise that would be due to God, which he was. But some in the crowd weren't ready to hear that. He was like, look, if they don't say it, the rocks and the trees are going to cry out, because that's just how true it is. And so there are situations where God will use whatever he wants, whether it's rocks, trees, or people, to accomplish his purpose. And to the degree we do not understand that, then we are falling short of our potential and potentially standing in the way of something that God is trying to do. However, on the other hand, our temptation is to take a story like this and expand it out into roles that God has never designated. And so without getting into the minutia of what roles God has or has not designated for people either in Israel or in the church, one of the things I think we all share in common is the temptation to use the scriptures to justify things we have it on our heart to do, whether or not God has actually called us to do those things. So as we often say, God's best to us as we go forward in him, God willing, overcoming the temptation to use God when honestly, we're really just not comfortable with the way in which he would use us.